Hi grade 8s, Mr. Drover here. Now I know this isn't as fancy as it was before. I went through some technical difficulties and then my camera broke, so I have to use it a little more old-fashioned. But we're going to get through this. It's not a terribly long one today, but it is important. We're talking about force, pressure, and area, alright? Things that are important that we touched upon in earlier units, but I want to solidify right now, alright? So defining pressure, okay? So force acting over a certain area is called pressure. So when something acts on a certain area, like let's say like a pipe or something, and that force is pushing on a very specific portion of that pipe, that's called pressure. When you change the area and keep the force constant, the pressure changes. So if you change the size of that pipe but you keep the force the same, the pressure is going to change. Alright? Calculating pressure. This is how we do it, okay? So if you have a force divided by area, that's the calculation. So for a given force, it's spread across a certain area. Think about it as like paint. You're painting, you have two liters of paint, and you can cover an entire desk, giant desk with it. But if you have a quite larger desk, you still have the same amount of paint. You just have to spread it out thinner. That's pretty much what pressure is. Force is measured in newtons, as we learned last lesson, and area is in square meters. So pressure is measured in newtons over meters squared. Okay, so that's your unit. Okay, so let's do a little example here. If there is a force of 10 newtons spread over 10 square meters, the pressure would equal 1 newton per square meter. If the same force was spread over 1 square meter, the pressure would be 10 newtons per square meter. The second would have greater pressure. So again, it's all about how much are you spreading those newtons around. If you only have 1 square meter to spread 10 of them around, all 10 of them are going to be that 1 square meter. But if you have 10 newtons over 10 squared meters, that means each newton has its own square meter to deal with, so the pressure is less. Okay? Pressure increase when there is more force over less area. If you keep the force the same and increase the area over which the force was applied, the pressure will decrease. Okay, so this is a good example here. You have let's say 10 newtons of force in this, okay? This small thing is 10 newtons of force. Now if you increase the size here but keep it 10 newtons, there's going to be less pressure. But if you shrink it super down tiny and you keep the same amount of stuff, it's going to actually increase the pressure, which can cause pipes to burst and eyeballs to pop out of your eye sockets, all that crazy stuff, okay? So an example of this is a man laying on a bed of nails. So that would suck. Anyone would tell you that would suck, even if they haven't done it, right? If he has a force of 800 newtons laying on 4 square meters, the pressure pushing on his back is 200 newtons per square meter. If he stood on his feet and put his 800 newtons on 0.5 square meters, the pressure pushing on his feet would be 1600 newtons squared per square meter, much more pressure. So he's lying on it, so he's increasing the surface area that each one of those nails are pushing on him. So he's not going to get as injured as if he just standed on 1 foot. It would like squish right through his foot and be disgusting, because all that pressure has to spread out evenly between his little foot, not his entire body. Alright? So that leaves us into Pascal's law. Now, this is something that's going to come up in grade 10. Oh, sorry. This little guy is being a doofus. Anyway, so Pascal's law. The law states that pressure exerted on a contained fluid is transmitted undiminished in all directions throughout the fluid and perpendicular to the walls of the container. Alright? So what this means, so mechanical systems use this law, An example would be a hydraulic lifts. Pressure is applied to the hydraulic arm and the pressure is used to cause the lift to do work. So what I want you to do is I want you to pause this video and I want you to go to the other video that I have attached to this post, and I want you to watch the video on Pascal's law. All right? All right, so this is your assignment for this week. Now, what I want to do here is just walk you through it. So we talked about pressure just now. Okay, so pressure is the force acting perpendicular on an area. The unit for pressure is nm squared. So newtons per meter squared, or Pascal. Okay, PA is another way we could say that. Now, when I say perpendicular, parallel is when two lines never touch. Perpendicular is the exact opposite. It's when it's going straight up, so cross, right? So if you put force this way, the pressure is going to build up this way, all right? So here's the formula for pressure written out. P, which is pressure, equals force divided by area, okay? So again, think of that paint analogy I talked about, okay? So Pascal's law states that an applied pressure applied at one point of the liquid transmits equally in all directions. So if we look at this picture here, you're squeezing the balloon here and pressure is pushing back in all directions, right? So pressure applied on one point of liquid transmits equally in all directions. All right, so that's a water balloon, and you're giving external pressure to it. All right, we're looking at this picture as a hydraulic lift. Okay, so if we have all this water here and we push the water down, it's going to cause pressure. And you see how these pipes are lined up? They're perpendicular. That pressure is actually going to push the water this way, push the water across that pipe, and then it's going to put the pressure upwards because it's going to be perpendicular again to this pipe. So it's going to push it upwards. So this hydraulic press is going to push that 1 pound, right? It's actually going to push 100 pounds just because of the amount of pressure it takes to move the water. All right. So we just want to reiterate mechanical advantage. The mechanical advantage is the ratio of forces. It compares the force produced by a machine to the force applied to the machine. So how much? So again, in this case, the force applied to the machine is 1 pound, and then the force produced is going to be 100, right? So it's giving you a mechanical advantage. So what I want you to do is I want you to go through these examples, and then you can go do activity 1. All right, basically I want to know what pressure is, what are the units for pressure, what's Pascal's law. I want you to do question 4 and 5. All right, and then if you have any questions, please let me know.